The first thing my mother said when I walked into the restaurant was not hello. It was, "Please don't embarrass us tonight." I stood there with my coat still on, my hand frozen around the strap of my purse, while my brother Marcus laughed into his wineglass like she had said something charming. My father didn't look up from the menu. My sister, Claire, gave me one quick scan from head to toe, stopping at my shoes. Not because they were ugly, because they were not expensive enough for the room. And across the table, sitting beneath the soft yellow light of a private dining room I had paid for without them knowing, my family waited for me to sit down and play the role they had assigned me years ago. The quiet daughter, the useful daughter, the one who never caused trouble, the one who always helped. I almost turned around and left, but then my mother leaned toward me and lowered her voice. "Your brother is in a difficult position," she said, "and this is not the time for you to be selfish." That was when I knew. They didn't invite me to dinner because they missed me. They invited me because they needed money. Again. Only this time, they had no idea I had come prepared. I smiled, pulled out the chair, and sat down. "Okay," I said calmly. "Let's talk about how much you need." The entire table went quiet. That should have been their first warning. But greedy people rarely notice danger when it arrives politely. My brother Marcus leaned back with the confidence of a man who had never cleaned up his own mess. He was 42, handsome in that polished, expensive way that worked well in photographs and badly in real life. He wore a watch that cost more than my first car and a navy suit that probably still had the tag hidden somewhere in the pocket, because Marcus liked the look of success more than the work behind it. "We're not here to beg," he said. "No?" I asked. Claire gave me a sharp look. "Don't start." I looked at her. "I just sat down." My father finally folded the menu and sighed. "This is exactly what your mother meant." There it was. The old family rhythm. Marcus could lose money, lie, manipulate people, and nearly destroy everyone around him. But if I responded in the wrong tone, I became the problem. My mother reached across the table and touched my wrist. It was not affection. It was control. "Emily," she said softly, "we are family." I almost laughed. Family. That word had been used against me so many times it barely sounded like English anymore. Family meant I babysat Claire's kids for free when she wanted weekends away. Family meant I sent my parents money when my father temporarily retired and forgot to temporarily find another job. Family meant I helped Marcus with rent, credit card payments, legal fees, business loans, and once, embarrassingly, a luxury gym membership he claimed was necessary for networking. Family meant I gave. They took. And somehow, I was always the one who needed to be more understanding. I picked up the water glass in front of me and took a slow sip. "How much?" I asked again. Marcus exchanged a look with my father. That little glance told me everything. They had rehearsed this. They had probably driven there together, planning who would speak first, who would guilt me, who would mention Mum's health, who would bring up childhood memories, who would call me cold if I hesitated. My father cleared his throat. "Marcus's company is going through a temporary cash flow issue." "His third temporary cash flow issue in 2 years?" I asked. Marcus's jaw tightened. It's more complicated than that. It always is. Claire leaned forward. Emily, this is not helpful. No, I said, but it is accurate. My mother's face hardened for half a second before she rearranged it into sadness. That was her gift. She could turn disappointment into a weapon without raising her voice. I don't know when you became like this, she whispered. Like this. Careful. Awake. Done. Those were the things they meant when they said I had changed. The waiter entered the room before anyone could speak. He smiled politely, placed menus down, and asked whether we were ready to order. Nobody was ready. The air was too thick. Marcus ordered a bottle of red wine anyway, an expensive one, of course. I watched him do it. Then I looked at my mother. So, I said, a cash flow issue. My father nodded. The bank is putting pressure on him. How much pressure? Marcus looked irritated. Why are you interrogating me? Because you want my money. Our money, my mother corrected. I turned to her slowly. Excuse me? She looked uncomfortable for the first time that night. I mean, family money. Money should circulate within the family. That sentence did something strange to me. It reached back through the years and opened a door I had spent a long time trying to close. I saw myself at 17, standing in the kitchen with an acceptance letter to Northeastern in my hand, while my parents told me they could not help me with tuition. I saw Marcus at 21, crashing his second car and getting a new one within a week. I saw Claire crying because she wanted a designer wedding dress, and my mother saying, "Your sister only gets married once." I saw myself eating instant noodles in a rented room with a leaking ceiling, while my parents told relatives I was independent by choice. Family money. It had circulated, just never toward me. I set the glass down. Tell me the number. Marcus looked at my father again. My father looked at my mother. Claire looked at her phone. Finally, my brother said it. 300,000. The room did not move. Even the candle on the table seemed to freeze. I stared at him. Dollars? Marcus rolled his eyes. Obviously. I waited for someone to laugh. Nobody did. My mother folded her hands as if she were about to pray. It sounds like a lot, she said. It is a lot. But compared to what you have... That was when I stopped breathing for a second. Not because they knew I had money. I had never hidden that I was doing well. They knew I owned a small consulting firm. They knew I had clients. They knew I travelled sometimes. But they did not know the real number. They did not know about the acquisition offer. They did not know I had sold 40% of my company 6 months earlier and kept control. They did not know the private dining room we were sitting in belonged to a restaurant group I had quietly invested in. And they definitely did not know that Marcus's temporary cash flow issue had already crossed my desk 3 weeks earlier under a different name. My brother's company was not just struggling, it was being investigated. I leaned back. What exactly is the money for? Marcus's smile disappeared. I told you. Cash flow. Payroll? No. Partly. Debt? Some. Legal fees? My mother blinked. Marcus went still. There it was, The first crack. Claire looked between us. What legal fees? Marcus snapped. Nothing serious. I looked at my sister. You didn't know? Know what? My father put both hands flat on the table. Emily, stop. I ignored him. Marcus is being sued by 2 former business partners. Marcus slammed his hand on the table hard enough to shake the silverware. That is not your business. It became my business when you asked for $300,000. My mother's voice trembled. How did you know that? I looked at her, and for one brief moment, I almost told her the truth. That I knew because one of Marcus's former partners had hired my firm. That I knew because I had seen emails, invoices, bank transfers, and signed documents with my brother's name on them. That I knew because the man sitting across from me was not a victim of bad luck. He was a liar who had used other people's money like a toy. But I had learned something over the years. If you reveal everything too early, people stop performing. And I needed them to perform. So I only said, I do my homework. Marcus pointed at me. You always do this. You always act like you're better than everyone. No, I said. I act like I can read. Claire whispered, Oh my God. My father's face turned red. That is enough. No, I said quietly. It really isn't. The waiter returned with the wine. The timing was almost cruel. He poured a little into Marcus's glass. Marcus tasted it like a man whose company wasn't bleeding from every side, and nodded. The waiter filled the glasses. When he reached me, I covered mine with my hand. No, thank you. Marcus smirked. Still acting superior? No, I said. I want a clear head. He didn't like that. Good. My mother tried to soften the room again. Emily, sweetheart, we are not here to fight. That depends. On what? On whether you came here to ask for help or demand obedience. She pulled back as if I had slapped her. My father muttered, Unbelievable. Marcus leaned forward. Fine. You want honesty? I need the money. The company needs it. People's jobs are on the line. That part might have been true. That was the cruel thing about Marcus. He always wrapped his lies around one real human consequence. Employees, family, reputation, stress, health. He used real people as shields. How many employees? I asked. 26. Full-time? He hesitated. Mostly. How many are unpaid right now? His eyes flickered. Claire whispered, Marcus? He ignored her. I opened my purse and took out a folded document. The table changed instantly. My mother stared at it. My father sat straighter. Marcus's face tightened with suspicion. What is that? He asked. My condition list. Nobody spoke. I placed it in the center of the table. Marcus laughed once. It sounded forced. You made a list? You asked for $300,000? Yes, Marcus. I made a list. My mother looked wounded. Conditions? For your own family? I turned to her. Yes. That one word landed harder than I expected. Maybe because it was the first time I had ever said it without explaining myself. Marcus grabbed the paper before anyone else could. His eyes moved quickly. Then his expression changed. Not anger at first. Fear. That was new. "What the hell is this?" he said. "My terms." "You can't be serious." "I am." Claire reached for the paper, but Marcus pulled it back. "What does it say?" she demanded. Marcus looked at me like he hated me, so I answered for him. Condition 1. Full access to the company's financial records for the past 3 years. My mother gasped. My father said, "Absolutely not." I continued. Condition 2. Marcus steps down as sole financial decision-maker until the loan is repaid. "This is insane," Marcus said. Condition 3. Every unpaid employee is paid before any executive expense, family expense, or personal reimbursement. Claire looked at Marcus. "Unpaid employees?" He snapped. "Stay out of it." She didn't. "How long have they been unpaid?" Marcus looked away. I kept going. Condition 4. No money goes directly to Marcus. It goes through an escrow account managed by my attorney. My mother's mouth opened. "Your attorney?" "Yes." "Why would you bring an attorney into a family matter?" "Because family matters are usually where people steal with the most confidence." My father stood up halfway. "Apologize to your mother." I looked at him. For what? Recognizing a pattern? His chair scraped as he sat back down. I saw it in his face. He was realizing something he should have realized years ago. I was not 17 anymore. I was not standing in the kitchen begging for help. I was sitting across from them with the money they needed. And for the first time, love was not enough to make me stupid. Marcus threw the paper onto the table. "You planned this?" "Yes." "For how long?" "Longer than tonight." His eyes narrowed. "What do you know?" I smiled slightly. "Enough." Claire picked up the paper now. Her face changed as she read. Condition 5, she said slowly. Written acknowledgement from the family that all previous personal loans from Emily were loans, not gifts. My mother's face went pale. My father looked away. Marcus gave a short, disgusted laugh. "You kept track?" I looked at him. Of every dollar. Claire stared at me. "How much?" I didn't answer right away. That was not by accident. Silence makes guilty people fill the room. My mother whispered, "Emily." I looked at her. $287,419. Nobody moved. Even Marcus stopped pretending. Claire lowered the paper. "You gave them that much?" "Not gave," I said. "Loaned." My father's voice was low. "You never said—" "I said it every time." "No," he argued. "You said, don't worry about it." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I said, don't worry about it right now. You all just heard the part you liked." My mother put a hand over her mouth. For once, I could not tell whether she was ashamed or calculating. Maybe both. Marcus leaned back and crossed his arms. "So what? You want us to sign some humiliating confession?" "No." "Then what?" "I want the truth written down before memory becomes convenient." Claire looked at me differently now. Not kindly, not yet, but differently. That mattered more than I wanted it to. Marcus pointed at the paper. "And if I don't agree?" I picked up my purse. "Then dinner is over." My mother panicked. "Emily, wait!" I stood. Marcus stood too. "Sit down," he said. I looked at him. He was taller than me, louder than me. He had spent his whole life believing volume was authority. But something changes inside you after years of being treated like a backup plan. You stop fearing disappointment. You stop needing permission. You stop shrinking just because someone expects you to. "No," I said. The private room became painfully quiet. Marcus's voice dropped. "You really want to destroy this family over money?" That was the sentence, the one I knew would come. I had heard versions of it my whole life. "You're tearing this family apart. You're making things difficult. You're being selfish. You're holding a grudge." Funny how the person with boundaries is always accused of destroying what the takers already broke. I looked at my brother. "No, Marcus. I'm refusing to finance the lie that this family was ever fair." My mother started crying. Softly, beautifully. She had always cried like an actress in a courtroom. My father put his arm around her and glared at me like I had drawn blood. Claire looked down at the condition list. Marcus said, "You'll regret this." I nodded. I used to regret saying no. I put my coat back on. Now I only regret how long it took me. And I left. I made it to the parking lot before my hands started shaking. That was the part nobody tells you about standing up for yourself. It does not always feel powerful. Sometimes it feels like nausea. Sometimes it feels like grief. Sometimes you sit in your car with the engine off, gripping the steering wheel, wondering why doing the right thing feels so much like betrayal. I thought I would cry. Instead, I laughed. Not because anything was funny, because my phone started ringing before I even left the parking lot. Mum, Dad, Claire, Marcus, Mum again. Then a text from Marcus. "You made a big mistake." Then another. "Don't forget what I know about you." I stared at that message. For a moment I felt 17 again. Cold kitchen tile, a letter in my hand. My mother saying, "Your brother needs help more than you do." My father saying, "You're strong. You'll figure it out." Marcus smiling from the hallway because he already knew he had won. But this time, I was not alone. And Marcus did not know what I knew about him. I forwarded the text to my attorney. Then I started the car and drove home. By morning, the family story had already changed. It always did. Claire left me a voicemail first. Her voice was clipped, irritated, but not as cruel as usual. "Emily, I don't know what happened last night, but Mum is devastated. Dad barely slept. Marcus says you ambushed everyone. I think you need to call and fix this before it gets worse." Before it gets worse. That was another family classic. It never meant before the truth comes out. It meant before people outside the family notice. I deleted the voicemail. Then my Aunt Patricia called, then my cousin Ryan, then an old family friend named Linda, who had not spoken to me in 6 years but apparently felt qualified to tell me that money should never come between blood. By noon, I understood. My mother had activated the network. Every family has one. The people who don't know the full story don't want the full story, but love the feeling of being morally involved. To them, I was the cold daughter who had humiliated her poor mother at dinner. Marcus was the stressed entrepreneur trying to save jobs. My father was the tired man caught between his children. And I was greedy. That word appeared 3 times before lunch. Greedy. Me. The woman who had quietly paid for hospital bills, property taxes, car repairs, school supplies, legal mistakes, emergency flights, and one very suspicious temporary investment opportunity that Marcus never mentioned again. At 1:17 p.m, my mother sent a message. I still remember it exactly. Emily, I hope you are proud of yourself. Your brother may lose everything because you need to punish us for the past. I raised you better than this. I stared at that last sentence for a long time. I raised you better than this. No, Mum. You trained me better than this. There is a difference. You trained me to feel guilty when I had needs. You trained me to apologize when others hurt me. You trained me to be useful, quiet, available, and easy to shame. But you did not raise me to be stupid. Not forever. I did not respond. Instead, I opened the folder on my laptop labeled M. Not Marcus. Mercy. That was what I had named it 6 months earlier, mostly as a joke. Inside were subfolders. Bank transfers, emails, loan notes, screenshots, voicemails, tax documents, property records, and one file I had not opened in weeks. dad_house_refinance.pdf. That file was the reason I had finally agreed to meet them. Not Marcus's company, not the lawsuit, not the guilt campaign. The house. My parents had refinanced their home 2 years earlier. They told everyone it was for medical expenses and repairs, but the money had not gone to medical expenses. It had gone to Marcus. And now the house was in danger. The home my grandmother had helped them buy. The home where every family birthday photo had been taken. The home my mother loved more than most people. And the worst part? They had used my name. Not legally, exactly. That would have been easier. No, they had used an old document I signed years earlier when my father needed help organizing paperwork after his surgery. A document that gave me limited authority to communicate with the bank on his behalf. Somehow, in the family version of events, that had become Emily knew, Emily approved, Emily handled it. I found out because the bank called me by mistake. That was 3 weeks before the dinner. And that was when the anger stopped being emotional and became practical. I hired an attorney. I hired a forensic accountant. I stopped answering family calls. And I waited to see who would lie first. Marcus did, of course. 2 days after the dinner, he showed up at my office. Not my home, my office. That was deliberate. He wanted an audience. He walked past reception like he owned the building, wearing sunglasses indoors and carrying a leather folder he probably thought made him look serious. My assistant, Nora, appeared at my door with the careful expression people wear when they are trying not to say, "Your family is insane." "Your brother is here," she said. I didn't schedule him. I know. Marcus stepped into view behind her. Really, Emily? I need an appointment now. I looked at Nora. Please, give us 10 minutes. She hesitated. I nodded. She left, but not far. Nora had worked with me long enough to know when to stay close. Marcus shut the door. Nice place, he said, looking around. Thank you. Must be doing better than you let on. I said nothing. He hated silence, always had. He walked toward my desk and placed the leather folder down like a threat. You need to drop the conditions. No? He smiled. You don't even know what I came to offer. I know you, Marcus. That's enough. His smile vanished. You think you're untouchable because you made some money? No. Good. I think I'm careful because I know what desperate people do. His eyes sharpened. There was the real Marcus, not the charming son, not the struggling businessman, the cornered man. You always wanted this, he said. What? To be above us. I looked at him for a long moment. You still don't understand. I never wanted to be above you. I just wanted you to stop standing on me. He opened the folder. Inside were printed pages, photos, old messages, a bank statement. For 1 second, I thought he had found something real. Then I saw the first page and almost felt embarrassed for him. It was a transfer I had made to myself from an account connected to my parents, years earlier. $5,000. I remembered it instantly. My father had asked me to pay a contractor after a pipe burst. I paid the contractor from my own account, then reimbursed myself from the emergency account he had authorized me to use. Marcus tapped the paper. Looks bad. I looked up at him. Does it? Money moved from Dad's account to yours, after I paid his contractor. Can you prove that? I opened a drawer, pulled out a folder, and placed the receipt on the desk. Marcus stared. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. You brought one accusation? I asked. Marcus, I brought binders. His face darkened. You think this is a game? No, I think you do. That's the problem. He leaned across the desk. You're going to help me. No. You are. No. His voice dropped. Because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of daughter you are. That should have hurt. A year ago, maybe it would have. But something had shifted in me after the dinner. When people already believe the worst about you, their threats lose weight. I stood slowly. Then tell them. He blinked. What? Tell everyone. He stared at me. Post it. Email it. Call Aunt Patricia. Make a slideshow if you want. He looked uncertain now. That was the thing about bullies. They prepare for fear. They rarely prepare for permission. I walked around the desk and opened the door. Nora looked up from her station instantly. We're done, I said. Marcus didn't move. I looked back at him. Oh, and Marcus? He turned. If you come to my office again without an appointment, security will remove you. His mouth tightened. You wouldn't. I smiled. You keep confusing the old me with the current one. He left, but he did not go quietly. That evening, the first public post appeared. It was from my mother. A soft focus photo of our family from 10 years earlier. Caption: Sometimes a mother's heart breaks not because her child is poor, but because her child becomes rich and forgets love. No names, no details, just enough poison. The comments filled quickly. Stay strong, Diane. Some people worship money. Family should come first. I'm so sorry. Then Claire shared it. Then Marcus. Then cousins.
Then people from church. By midnight, I was the villain in a story I had not agreed to enter. And that was when the unexpected message came. Not from my family, not from a lawyer. From a woman named Alicia Grant, Marcus's former operations manager. Her message was short. Emily, I don't know if you remember me. We met once at your parents' anniversary dinner. I saw the posts. If this is about Marcus and money, there are things you should know. I have documents. I kept copies because I was scared. I read it twice, then a third time. My heart did not race, it dropped. Because suddenly I understood something. Marcus had not just stolen from investors. He had not just drained my parents. He had not just lied to employees. He had built an entire life out of other people's trust. And my family had not called me to save him because they believed he was innocent. They called me because they were afraid of what would happen when everyone found out he wasn't. The next morning, I met Alicia at a coffee shop 20 minutes outside the city. She looked exhausted. Not dramatic, not frightened in an obvious way. Just tired in the way people look when they have spent too long carrying a truth nobody wants. She placed a flash drive on the table between us. I don't want money, she said before I could speak. Okay. I don't want revenge either. I waited. She wrapped both hands around her coffee. I want him to stop. That sentence told me more than the flash drive. Alicia had worked for Marcus for 4 years. She had handled schedules, vendor contracts, investor communications, payroll reports, not high-level strategy, not ownership, but enough to see patterns. Enough to know when invoices didn't match. Enough to know when employees were told next week for 6 weeks straight while Marcus leased a new car. Enough to know when investor updates were rewritten to sound better than reality. She had kept records because one day Marcus blamed her for a missing payment. That's when I realized, she said. If he could blame me for that, he could blame me for everything. I listened. I took notes. I asked questions. And the more she spoke, the clearer it became. My condition list at dinner had not been harsh. It had been merciful. Because Marcus did not need a loan. He needed consequences. Alicia's final document was the one that made the room tilt. It was an email chain. Marcus and my father. Subject line, Emily option. I stared at those 2 words. Alicia watched my face. I'm sorry, she said. I opened it. The messages were from 8 months earlier. Marcus needed capital. My father suggested asking me. Marcus said I would say no if I knew the full picture. Then my father wrote, Then don't give her the full picture. Your mother can handle Emily. She still wants approval. I stopped reading. Not because I was shocked, because I was not shocked enough. That was the saddest part. Some betrayals hurt because they surprise you. Others hurt because they confirm what you begged yourself not to believe. Alicia touched the edge of the table. "Are you okay?" I nodded, but I was not. I was calm, which was worse. Anger burns hot. Calm builds plans. I thanked Alicia and told her my attorney would contact her if she was willing. She said yes. Then she said one more thing before leaving. "There's a board meeting Friday. Emergency session. Marcus is trying to push through a rescue agreement." "With who?" She looked at me. "Your parents." I sat very still. "My parents don't have money." "No," Alicia said, "but they have the house." That was the moment the story stopped being about my money. It became about the last thing my family still had left to lose, and whether I was willing to let them lose it to finally learn the truth. The board meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. By Thursday night, I still hadn't decided what I was going to do. Not because I didn't know the truth. I knew the truth. The problem was deciding how much of it I was willing to expose. There is a strange moment that comes before a family finally breaks. Most people imagine screaming, arguments, doors slamming. But real families usually fall apart much more quietly. One decision, one document, one sentence. And suddenly everyone realizes the version of reality they've been living inside no longer exists. Friday arrived cold and grey. At 8:45 a.m., I parked across the street from Marcus's office building. The flash drive Alicia gave me sat inside my purse. So did a folder prepared by my attorney. I watched people enter the building. Employees, managers, investors. People who still believed Marcus could save the company. People who had no idea how much damage had already been done. Then I saw my parents. My mother looked nervous. My father looked exhausted. For the first time in years, neither of them looked confident. Because deep down, they knew. They knew they weren't walking into a rescue. They were walking into a reckoning. I followed them inside. The meeting room was already crowded. Investors sat on one side, senior employees sat on the other. Marcus stood near a large screen at the front of the room. For a moment, he looked exactly like the successful businessman he always pretended to be. Expensive suit, perfect smile, confident posture. Then he saw me. And the smile disappeared. The room went quiet. My mother immediately stood. "Emily." I nodded politely. Nothing more. No hug, no conversation, no performance. Marcus recovered quickly. Of course he did. People like him survive through confidence, even fake confidence. "You came." I sat down. "You invited half the city." A few people laughed. Marcus didn't. The meeting began. For 20 minutes he presented charts, forecasts, recovery plans, revenue projections, new opportunities, future growth. Listening to him was almost impressive. If I didn't know the truth, I might have believed him. Then he reached the final slide. Additional capital requirement, $300,000. The exact number. The room became still. Marcus began explaining how the funding would stabilize operations, protect employees, restore investor confidence,
Preserve future growth. Everything sounded reasonable. That was the dangerous part. Good lies usually do. Then one investor raised his hand, a grey-haired man named Robert. "Where exactly is the money coming from?" Marcus smiled. "We have several private options available." Another lie. I watched him say it, calmly, comfortably, like breathing. Then Robert asked another question. "Do those private options know about the pending litigation?" The room shifted. Marcus hesitated, only for half a second, but I saw it, the first crack. "Those matters are being resolved." Robert didn't look convinced. Neither did anyone else. Then another investor spoke. "What about payroll delays?"
Marcus immediately answered. "Temporary administrative issues." Alicia looked down at the table. I could almost see the frustration on her face. Years of watching this happen. Years of hearing the same excuses. And suddenly I realized something. Marcus wasn't going to stop. Not voluntarily. Not today. Not next month. Not after another loan. Because every time he escaped consequences, he learned the same lesson. Someone else would clean up the mess. Usually me. Not this time. I stood. The room turned toward me. Marcus looked irritated. "Emily, we're in the middle of... You lied!" The sentence landed harder than I expected. Not because it was dramatic. Because it was simple. Marcus laughed. "Excuse me?" "You lied about the lawsuits." Silence. "You lied about payroll." Silence. "You lied about company debt." Now people were looking at him instead of me. That was new. Marcus crossed his arms. "And what exactly are you accusing me of?" I opened the folder. The first document hit the table, then the second, then the third. Each one slid toward a different investor. No speeches, no yelling. Just evidence. The strongest weapon in any room. Facts. I watched faces change one by one. Confusion, concern, shock, anger. Robert adjusted his glasses and read silently. Another investor opened an email chain. Someone else flipped through financial reports. The room felt different now. Like oxygen had disappeared. Marcus looked toward my father, then my mother, then back to me. And for the first time in my entire life, he looked afraid. Real fear. Not embarrassment, not frustration. Fear. "Where did you get those?" I smiled slightly. "From people you underestimated." Nobody spoke. Then Robert pushed his chair back, slowly. "Is this authentic?" My attorney answered. "Verified." One word. Verified. The meeting ended right there. Not officially, no one announced it, but everyone knew. The presentation was over. The performance was over. The story was over. The truth had arrived. The next few weeks moved fast, much faster than Marcus expected. The investors launched a formal review. The lawsuits expanded. Former employees began speaking openly. Additional records surfaced. And every time someone looked deeper, they found more. Not criminal mastermind level fraud. Something worse. Entitlement, negligence, arrogance.
The belief that consequences only happened to other people. The company survived. Barely. But Marcus didn't. He was removed from leadership. His ownership stake was reduced through restructuring agreements. The expensive lifestyle disappeared first, then the luxury apartment, then the car, then the confidence. Funny how quickly confidence evaporates when other people's money stops paying for it. But the hardest part wasn't watching Marcus fall. It was watching my parents. Because reality finally reached them too. The house refinance became public during the financial review. The numbers came out. The transfers came out. The decisions came out, and suddenly the family narrative collapsed. They could no longer pretend they had been helping Marcus. They had been sacrificing everyone else for Marcus, including themselves, especially themselves. For nearly 2 months, nobody contacted me. No calls, no messages, no guilt, no accusations, nothing. And honestly, the silence felt wonderful. Then, one Sunday afternoon, my father called. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. His voice sounded older, not physically, emotionally. "We need to talk." I looked out the window. "What about?" A long pause, then, "I owe you an apology." I wasn't prepared for that. Not because I wanted it, because I had stopped expecting it years ago. My father continued. "I kept telling myself I was protecting the family." Another pause. "I was protecting Marcus." I said nothing. "Your mother and I convinced ourselves that because you were responsible, you could handle more." I closed my eyes. There it was. The truth. Not dramatic, not complicated, just ugly. "You always landed on your feet," he said, "so we kept dropping things on you." For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said something I never expected. "You were right." 3 words, 20 years late, but real. And somehow that mattered. More than I thought it would. The conversation lasted almost an hour. No miracles happened, no movie ending, no sudden perfect family. Life doesn't work like that. Trust takes years to break, and longer to rebuild. My mother called 2 weeks later. The conversation was harder. She cried. I cried. We talked about things neither of us had ever said out loud. Some wounds healed, some didn't. But for the first time, we were discussing reality instead of pretending. Marcus never apologized. Not really. He sent one message 3 months later. It simply said, "You could have destroyed me." I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, "No. You almost destroyed yourself. I just stopped protecting you." That was the last conversation we had. A year later, things looked very different. My company had grown. The investors I met through the restructuring became clients. Alicia joined one of my advisory teams. The house was safe. My parents kept it. Not because I paid their debts, I didn't. Because they finally stopped financing Marcus. Imagine that. The solution had been there the whole time. And one evening, nearly 18 months after that dinner, I sat alone on the back porch of my parents' house.
the same house that had almost been lost. The sun was setting. The neighborhood was quiet. My father was inside making coffee. My mother was watering flowers. Simple things. Normal things. For years, I thought winning meant proving I was right, that everyone would finally see what I saw, that justice would feel satisfying. I was wrong. The best part wasn't being right. The best part was no longer carrying the responsibility of saving people who refuse to save themselves. Because the truth is, my family wanted my money. But what they really wanted was something much more dangerous. They wanted access. Access without accountability, support without responsibility, love without boundaries. And when I finally gave them conditions, everything changed. Not because the conditions were cruel, because they were honest. Sometimes the most powerful word in the world isn't revenge. It isn't justice. It isn't even forgiveness. Sometimes it's simply no. And sometimes that one word is the beginning of everything.